Welcome to the Ingersöll Show.
Nilon, through Nilon. That's I think the nickname that I call you is one of my favorite nicknames that I call anybody that I know.
There's probably about 5 to 10 people that give me the Nilon. Yeah, very random.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the funniest skits of all time. So
that is true.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were just before we started rolling, talking a little bit about sort of like, you know, if somebody asks you what your piece of advice would be for anybody starting a business, like what would your first thing be that you would tell somebody?
Yeah, and know who you're getting in bed with. It's very important. Know who your business partners are. Know who your investors are. Be comfortable with those people. Make sure that you're willing to go the distance with them, because once you are committed, you really are committed.
Yeah, and what you were saying too is like, it's strange because you're almost in more of a strict marriage with everybody involved in the business than you are like a real marriage in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's almost you're almost more committed than an actual marriage is the way that I feel sometimes. So
same here, brother.
Know who you're doing business with.
Yeah, man. And your business is super fascinating too, because sort of you're kind of in like this super sexy business space, right? Like EDM, you know, you're dealing with artists and all this crazy shit. Like, what's that been like? And for people listening, like you are deep in the EDM scene, you run one of the coolest brands in the space, and like, I'm just going to leave it open. Like, what has that been like?
I'm sure you can relate to this, but I think all businesses look a bit sexier from the outside than they actually are, right? It's obviously been a pleasure being able to work with some of these artists. We've worked with everyone from, your Skrillex, Tiesto, some of the biggest dance music artists in the world, Kygo, Marshmello, all these guys, their managers, their agents, which has been, obviously, we've been very fortunate to be able to work with them. But on a day-to-day basis, it's a grind. It's not glamorous. We're in the office and we're answering emails just like everyone else. But, when we do get those opportunities, going to the shows and meeting people, we have artists coming through the office all the time. That's obviously a plus. And I think it's, our employees like it too. They're all music fans. Some of them produce music. All of them are pretty involved in some sort of music scene. And so for them, it's pretty rewarding, which for me is kind of makes it all worth it.
That's interesting. And when you're going to hire people, then is this something where you get a lot of inbound of just like fans of EDM, or is it a mix of both? Or I would imagine a lot of people talk about company culture, and for a business like yours and a business like mine as well, but in particularly yours, that has this crazy sort of culture already built around it. Mm-hmm. How similar or different is sort of the company culture in the space versus sort of the more ethereal culture related to the industry that you're in?
Yeah, it's a bit funny. Sometimes we kind of, we'll make fun of the culture at times within the office. Probably shouldn't be saying that, but yeah,
me too, bro.
Sometimes we, are sending memes from making fun of the dance music culture in general, the kind of the customers that we're selling to. Of course we love it. We listen, music's going on at all times in the office, and most of the time it's dance music. But I think that, and to answer your question, we've had so many fans that have reached out, asking us if there's job openings, and couldn't be more grateful for that. That's a really good position to be in, to have people wanting to work for your company. Sometimes, as you know, hiring can be very difficult, finding the right people. And we've been very fortunate to be able to bring on a group of people that I think have interests outside of what we're doing. We have a couple of the kids produce music. We have 2 people who manage artists on the side. We have someone who's an actor. And so everyone, we kind of encourage having hobbies, interests, and passions outside of work. And I don't know if we've just been lucky to kind of get these people, or if they've just kind of come to us who naturally, kind of gravitated towards that. I'm not quite sure what it is, but we've been very fortunate in that sense.
Wow, that's actually super fascinating because, cultivating sort of that idea that side hustles are a good thing and somehow positively contribute to your actual business is somewhat of a rare perspective, right? I mean, like to say, yeah, like they manage some artists on the side, or they're acting, or they're whatever, producing music even. In my mind, I think we think similarly along this line, but I think in corporate America, or even in some startups, it's somewhat discouraged because, they don't want their employees to go out and oh, you're producing music on the side. Are you going to leave us? But I think that famine mentality probably isn't the best way to create a vibrant company culture.
You're spot on. I mean, the way that I think about it is that, look, I want our employees to hang around for as long as possible. As you know, turnover is not great. Training people, that whole process of losing someone potentially who's talented, that's something that I think all business owners maybe lose a little bit of sleep over. And I think, though, that if you are overbearing on your employees and you only, it's kind of like a dictatorship where you're saying, you only need to, you only should be working on this business and you only should be focusing on us. That's going to push people away. That's not a natural human reaction, right? You want to encourage these people to be happy, right? Because if your employees are happy and they're well balanced outside of work, they're working 20 hours a day, they're going to get burned out and they're going to leave your company very quickly. So I want actually my employees to live a balanced life. I want them to be, happy on the outside, traveling. We offer, a pretty lenient PTO policy because I want them to live balanced lives. I want them to travel. I want them to have hobbies and do all these things because I believe that will lead them to be more happy inside the office and will keep them around longer.
The craziest thing is, as you're saying this, and I'm sitting here nodding my head and agreeing with everything you're saying, is it's a very new perspective on the way that you run a business. I can only think about our grandparents' generation, or even our parents' generation, or perhaps even the one just right above us. It's never really functioned that way, right? It's like, oh, well, you want some PTO, you better rack it up, boy, get in there and work. I don't know, maybe you get 0.25 hours of vacation for every week that you work, something like that. And it's cool to see sort of the new take on business and what that can be, because it's not that far going from sort of that dictatorial, management style before your Foxconn.
Exactly.
It's not that far away.
It's not. And I think I have a unique perspective that I have been burnt out significantly. I went through 2017. I took no vacations, hardly took any personal time for myself, was working way too many hours and got very burnt out to the extent that I was ready to leave the company. And if, as a business owner, if I'm wanting to leave my own company that I started, how are my employees going to feel who, don't have skin in the game if they're working 24 hours a day type of thing, and they're not taking personal time for themselves? They're going to get burnt out way quicker than I am. They're going to want to leave way sooner. So I think you really got to take, your own personal experience and then apply that to other people. Just because I'm the owner of the business doesn't mean that I should get certain special privileges potentially that other employees don't. Of course, we're going to have more flexibilities, but I think that unique perspective has allowed us to get to that mindset.
That is some crazy self-awareness, right? And I've certainly felt the burnout on multiple different occasions. And it's tough to deal with, right? It's like there's no playbook that says, oh, you're feeling burned out of your own business, right? You're running the show, and then you're just working yourself into the ground, and there's no one like keeping you accountable for yourself other than you to take that time to create some form of balance. And so, like, how have you dealt with that? And the reason I ask is mostly selfishly, being that I've ran into a few burnout scenarios. How do you go about doing that? Is it a hard reset? Is it sort of intermittent planning beginning of the year? How do you view that?
So on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis, for me, I'm thinking about longevity. So, some people and everyone has their own kind of strategy and approach for how they, approach their day and their week. I know people who work 7 days a week and they seem to keep chugging along, and that's great for them. That just doesn't work for me. During the week, what's important for me, a successful day, is being first person in the office, but then making sure I'm also exercising, I'm reading, I'm cooking dinner for myself. And those last, things, the working out and cooking dinner and reading, are equally as important to me as making sure my day is productive. Because when I leave the office and I go exercise, that allows me to mentally, de-stress for the day. And then cooking is very therapeutic. And then I go and I read and I stimulate the mind before I go to bed, and then get up and do it the next day. And for me, that allows for sustainability. And that's more the way that I approach a week and a month and a year. And then when I, you get that feeling where you're just starting to feel a little bit wound up a bit, even when you're doing your routine and you say, okay, I'm starting to feel a little burnt out. Then I go and take a vacation, go take a week off, or, 2 weeks, and completely just go off the grid, try not answer emails, and really just be in the moment wherever I am.
Wow. Yeah, it's a smart idea, in that I think sometimes the way people think about it is, I'm going to work until I get burnt out, and then I'm just going to take a 2-week vacation or something like that. But then what that really sets up is some sort of, cycle, almost like a bad relationship, right? And then and then I take the 2 weeks, and then a month later I'm burnt out, and then I do that for another 12 months before I take 2 more weeks. Yep. At least in entrepreneurial space, something that I see relatively often are people doing that. And the building it into your daily routine is interesting, in that it's almost counterintuitive. But if you think about it, like eating healthy or working out or anything, right? The more that you do it on a consistent basis, the more it will benefit you.
Yeah. And for me, I'm glad you touched on the eating healthy, and for me, sleeping, all this stuff. My goal on a week-to-week basis is to be operating at, the best that I possibly can be operating at. And so that means that I also need to be getting a certain amount of sleep. Again, everyone's different on this front. Some people can operate on less sleep. For me, I really need 7 to 8 hours of sleep for the next day to be mentally efficient, making the right decisions. If I get less than that, I can tell I'm foggy, I get cranky, type of thing. Also, eating healthy is very important to me during the week. I'm gonna get a little bit more loose on the weekends, but the way that I structure my day with all of this is all for sustainability and to be for optimal performance.
Right. Yeah, and I think that oftentimes that's a little bit overlooked, the eating healthy part and the exercising part. A lot of people see that as, kind of optional. And at least in my mind, it's mandatory. When I work out, the mental clarity that I receive in return is it's unable to be achieved through really any other method. And, that probably speaks in large part to our human biology and the way that we were meant to be, sort of just in the prairie, running away from saber-toothed tigers and, hiding in trees and shit like that. Yeah. But I think it's important. And I don't know what percentage of the U.S. population actually has a consistent routine to exercise on a weekly basis, but it's probably not nearly as much as it should be.
It's not enough, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think what's unfortunate about the last point on this is that I think it's a bit, there's a toxic culture, I think, that was started, it's been around for a long time, right? It started probably on Wall Street with bankers, and then moved to Silicon Valley, this kind of concept of working nonstop, 80, 90-hour weeks, having no life, all in the sake of, just working to work and to create more value for the business. But I think the more that we have studied that and understood that concept, I think the more we see, humans are burning out and kind of breaking in a sense. I think we need to rethink this concept. Because if we want, really, at the end of the day, if we want optimal performance in the business world, it's not just about working yourself, until you can't move anymore type of thing, or you can't think. It's not the most efficient way.
Yeah. And it resonates with me because that's been the majority of my life, is that exact story, working your hands down to the bone. And, everybody has their different reasons for it. For me, it was to sort of jump out of the poverty cycle. But as soon as you get the chance to get out of that, you got to employ the balance and the longevity approach, because you can't do that forever. You can sprint, if you're in a terrible situation and you need to just not sleep for a year and just fucking work and grind to get out of it, do it. But as soon as you get the chance, find the balance somehow.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm glad you brought that up. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family, right, where I didn't have to, by no means were we rich in any way, but I didn't have to worry about potentially not getting a meal, or, I was able to go to good schools, had great teachers, and my parents were both at home, and they supported me. A lot of kids growing up don't have these same simple luxuries. Well, they should be simple luxuries, but unfortunately they're not. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was able to grow up in an environment where I didn't have to necessarily work myself into, a coma just to get out of a situation. So, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no, it is. And, I think, whenever we talk, somehow the subject of longevity comes up, and like performance and that sort of thing. What other kind of things do you research and think about in terms of longevity and performance, and like optimizing yourself now and 50 years from now?
Yeah, that's there's so much.
I'm opening the Pandora's box.
Yeah, you really are. This is what kind of gets me going. This is the type of stuff that I'm reading in my spare time, just about health. A couple of my buddies give me a hard time because I got a pill jar like a Monday through Friday thing that looks like what your grandma probably has, because she takes like 100 pills a day. At least my grandma does, type of thing. So I have something similar with all the kind of healthy stuff that I take on a day-to-day basis. Some of my buddies give me a hard time, but I think there's the main pillars of health. It's just what I think about, what I study. Exercising, sleep, diet, and mental health, is now obviously such an important fourth key factor in that, and try and do everything that I can in all four areas to make sure, that, the goal is to have a healthy body for as long as possible, avoid disease. So everything I do is, from meditation on the mental side to eating healthy, a lot of vegetables, try and not do a ton of sugar, a ton of carbs, that type of stuff. I do have a sweet tooth, so I get myself in trouble there sometimes. But and then obviously exercising 5 days a week. There's nothing too crazy about, I think, living a healthy lifestyle. I think it's just about being disciplined enough to follow through on everything. It's very hard business in the way that we live our lives. I think in the U.S. We're incentivized not to live healthy because there's a lot of money in fast food and in sweets and in binging, TV on the couch. Living an unhealthy lifestyle is profitable for a lot of businesses. So I think that it's all about just being disciplined, and there's nothing too crazy, that you have to do.
Right. And the pill box, I got one of those myself. Have had for several years. We're like, what the fuck are you taking, bro? But are you fucking with any nicotinamide riboside?
I have no idea what that is. You gotta let me know.
Oh, bro. All right. So this is, I'm not a researcher or PhD, so take this with a big old grain of Himalayan salt. So essentially, nicotinamide riboside is, or it's NAD plus, or it's a precursor to NAD plus.
I take NAD plus. I just not familiar with the full.
I fucking knew you were taking that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Me too.
Oh yeah.
How about berberine?
No.
Are you on the berberine? No. No.
NAD plus, certain things just like turmeric, B vitamin, vitamin D. Most people are obviously deficient in vitamin D. We are inside all the time. I'm taking, I'm just blanking. Certain things like chlorella, certain super healthy algae and stuff like that. Most of the stuff I take is
little
none of that.
Human growth hormone.
None of that. It's mostly all natural stuff. Not too much stuff grown in the lab.
Yeah. Not too much stuff grown in the lab.
Yeah, that's right.
I wonder if like in the future, we're talking about this, we had brunch on the weekend, sort of what the human lifespan will be in the not too distant future. And so you have things like CRISPR, right? Modifying babies and all other kinds of crazy shit. The theoretical ability to modify our own DNA, sort of post being a human being for a period of time. What kind of stuff you been researching about that kind of shit?
Yeah. I think we're in one of the most exciting times, the most exciting time in human history for medicine. Everything that's happening right now with the money that's being poured into human longevity is pretty incredible, and the stuff that we're finding out. Obviously, with any invention, CRISPR, for example, there's always going to be, with any new invention, there's always going to be ways to abuse that for potentially negative consequences, or whatever you want to say about it. Obviously, with CRISPR, people are concerned about designer babies and a global elite being able to become even more elite because they're the ones that have the money to modify their babies to be smarter and taller and faster and everything that you can possibly think of. So yes, of course, you can say, that's going to happen. However, I'm a bit more of a little less cynical about it. With stuff like CRISPR, we can potentially remove any sort of DNA-based diseases, autism, stuff that just set people up at the start of their life with a bad deck of cards type of thing, dealt a super bad hand. We can remove these type of things. Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's. I truly believe that we're under 20 years from being able to really actually cure these diseases because stuff like CRISPR. And then to touch further on longevity. Something we were talking about over the weekend, we've developed nanites that, I think pretty soon if people are comfortable with it, I sure will be. You'll be ingesting tiny nanites that will essentially monitor your organs, your heart, so that if, say, for example, your glucose levels are off, or, something, your liver or your kidney is off just a little bit, it's going to be able to detect this far sooner than we would, because there's things that go wrong inside of our body, and we feel fine, and it's long before once that starts hurting, it's actually been going on for a long time. So these nanites will be able to detect this far before we would be able to, and we'll be able to go do preventive medicine. So many diseases are preventable and curable if we catch them early enough, right? So there's so many exciting things I think that are going to be able to push healthy human health, right? Because who wants to live till they're 150 if we're all decrepit, right? It's about actually pushing the healthy lifespan. So if we can be 80, for example, and feel like we're 50, that is the goal. I think that's what we're really putting the money towards, and I'm very confident. For us, we're around 30. I think that's going to be realistic in our lifetimes.
I think so too. And the nanites is such a crazy idea, right? So it's like you're sitting there right now, maybe you got a headache or whatever, or, your ankle is sprained. And so you take a pill of turmeric and you're like, oh, it's anti-inflammatory and good shit like that, which it is, and which I take etc. However, in the future, instead of having something going on in your body, like you said, you're just going to swallow a pill full of little nano robots that go and just live inside your bloodstream, which is the fucking craziest shit. And how that readout happens, like maybe eventually, right? Bluetooth 56.7B, pop it up on your phone. See what those little tiny nano robots are doing, swimming around in your kidneys or whatever the fuck's going on, Like, that is so exciting for me to think about. And I'll probably let you swallow them first for like a year. and then I might start taking some in.
Yeah, I think I'd be the first to admit I'm not going to be the first person to do it, but I'll be an early adopter for sure once it's tested and proven. And there's other exciting things too. We're 3D printing organs and hearts. We just 3D printed the first heart that actually had a beat. For example, my even if you're fortunate enough not to be killed by one of the 4 major things right now, it's cardiovascular, cancer, stuff like diabetes and obesity, and then neurodegenerative diseases. So anything, Alzheimer's, that type of stuff. If you're able to avoid one of those and you just get old, unfortunately, the way our bodies work is they just start breaking down. And so, for example, my grandma has had fantastic health, but she's just 92 years old and her kidneys are failing because she's just so damn old. I think, again, within our lifetimes, it's actually going to be happening very soon. We'll be able to go in and, replace these organs with 3D printed ones that are essentially brand new, which is, for me, is so exciting, right? If you can go in and, you got a bad heart, we don't need to wait for transplants. We don't need to wait for someone to die that hopefully blood matches and all this type of stuff. We can go in and we're replacing, our hearts with brand new 3D printed ones that are at some point will, I would imagine, pump and operate a lot better than ours do currently.
Right. And so do you think that it'll start out, I would imagine it'll probably start out as, human tissue and then eventually graduate into some type of robotic synthetic something? Because then in theory, it could last a lot longer.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to touch on that. I don't want people to think we're too much of a crazy guy. But yes, hypothetically, you could see past, if it's not human tissue, it's robotics, and potentially replacing organs with robo organs that have no timetable. They last forever. I think that is. It's only a matter of time. Yeah, is really what it is at this point.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I think they invented this in Canada, but it's a robotic retina that you can have, even if you have good vision, you can put it in your eye, and then you have like 20/15 vision forever. It just never goes away.
Yep,
I might sign up for that shit.
Same.
So you already know about this. Yeah, that's what I love about this.
I have. Look, I have no problem. We need to use what we have to our advantage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just waiting for him to bust out the Cyclops Terminator edition.
It is it's a bit concerning, of course, and with everything, like I was saying earlier, there's doomsday scenarios, of course, but I have confidence that there is more good than bad in this world, and that we've at least gotten ourselves this far.
Yeah,
hopefully we're not gonna blow ourselves up and kill ourselves. I'm confident.
Yeah, I am too. And speaking of the doomsday real quick, when do you think we'll have an all robotic army like Boston Dynamics, is it? Boston Dynamics style fucking bipedal robots that can jump like 30 feet in the sky and are just these marauding fucking machine gun enabled GPS tracking and just running shit like mech wars.
I do not have the knowledge to give you
definitely not. This is all bullshit.
I'm not unfortunately my uncle is not a 4-star general or something like that, but I mean, we already have drones now. We already have, there's and obviously the larger single drones, but there's small drones now that I was reading the other day that ISIS or something along those lines used a team of coordinated drones similar to the ones that, you know, you can just buy on Amazon. You know, they're similar in size, but they have certain programming that allows them to operate in unison, and they can do very harmful things. So
whoa,
we're there already to an extent, but your question was, when are we going to have Terminator style robots that are?
I just want one to guard my shit, bro.
Yeah, hopefully never, maybe, in a sense. The thought is really scary.
It is kind of terrifying.
It's very terrifying.
Well, I mean, hypothetically, if you have like a ground dwelling giant machine, robot, bodyguard, murderer machine thing that's loyal to only you and your family, I mean, you could also have one that's just flying in the sky like a fucking pterodactyl.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't gain consciousness, I think, you know, we'll be all right. But that's a whole nother conversation. But as you know, we're working towards the singularity. So that, of course, would be the biggest thing to happen in human history, without a doubt, if that happens within our lifetime or not.
I can only imagine you're going to like trick or treat with your kids or whatever, right? And you go up, you're like, ding dong, and you know, your little 4-year-old Grim Reaper with his little, you know, candy basket, and then just from the fucking sky, bro, he's here. The fucking giant fucking Terminator robot bodyguard of the house. It's like, we're okay, man. Yeah.
It's a scary thought.
It kind of is
a very scary thought.
But it's also kind of awesome.
It is.
But if that thing somehow grows consciousness, we're all fucked.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Do you think, on the singularity front, to go just right on down the rabbit hole, do you think that robots will become conscious first, or humans will be able to download their brains onto a robotic device, thus becoming a hybrid of sorts first?
I would have to go with robots being conscious first.
I think so too.
I think we're so far away from being able to extract our brains onto, from my knowledge, is we're not even close to that. And I know that obviously, you know, the progress we're making in AI and robotics, where, you know, I mean, IBM's Watson, that machine is unbelievable. You know, there's certain AI programs that are, many AI programs that are doing a lot of human tasks much better than humans. I don't think, obviously, the majority of the population is aware of the displacement that is about to come in so many industries. But with that said, you know, AI is going to be more so developed for specific tasks. Humans are very, you know, the brain is a very complex and impressive operating system that we haven't even figured out yet. So I think we're still very far away from being able to figure out how to give that to a machine, because we don't even understand it ourselves fully.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And, you know, AI moreover will be for very specific tasks, right? Like assembly line stuff, or, you know, certain warehouse type, you know, related activities, whatever, production line type things. And, you know, when I think about that, and so let's say you have sort of a fleet of Watsons, and their job is to like fill jars with indiscriminate goop and label it and jar it and then take it to the truck and put it in a truck, and the truck is automated and all that shit. You think those motherfuckers one day just be sitting around and just be like, bitch, we don't even get paid. We're going on strike. Are they going to unionize?
Only if we give them the power to do so. The mental ability to be able to process that thought.
Yeah.
Which will, unfortunately, at some point be a reality. Or fortunately. I mean, I think, you know, it's interesting. I heard one time Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, on a podcast, and he's an optimist when it comes to AI and robotics. Obviously, there's certain people, very smart people. You got Elon Musk, who's more doomsday scenario type of guy, which is validated, of course, to an extent. You know, I think both sides have legitimate arguments for, you know, yes, this could be the end of humans, or yes, it could be the greatest thing that we ever accomplish, right? So, but Reid was saying, I think it's more of a human flaw in the way that our brains work to assume that if we were able to give a machine consciousness, that the first act that it would do would say, hey, I am superior, I will now kill all these people. And when you think about it like that, it's like, okay, that's more of like a human flaw, because right, we're built to survive. That is our most at our core. There's nothing more pure in our bodies than the drive to survive. And so I think that when we think about giving a machine consciousness and giving something that would instantly be, we would be gnats compared to it, that because it could obviously instantly learn from itself, and we wouldn't even be able to comprehend the abilities that it would have. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to instantly go and say, okay, these people are worthless, I'm just going to kill them all and start my own race. I think that's more of a flaw of humans, and that was his concept, and it kind of really resonated with me.
Interesting. When I think about that, I think about, if they truly do have consciousness in the form that we think about it, and you think about all things in nature that we're aware of, plants, bugs, bacteria, viruses, parasites, human beings, chimpanzees, right? They're all, it seems like everything in the known universe is trying to survive to some extent. And I guess the question would be, you give them consciousness and they will, they realize that they're part of the physical world. And they also know that they need like their battery charged, or they need certain software upgrades, or they need, certain things done to maintain their existence in a way, which just, I guess the thought of maintaining your existence, even on the most basic level, right? Like, the battery needs charged for my, robot body to work, or whatever it is. That is a sliver of survival already.
Yep.
Right.
Spot on. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to obviously revolt against us.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're going to enslave the human race and annihilate everybody.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're on the flip side of it, maybe, right, because I think the concept is if we achieve the singularity in a machine is able to become conscious, like IBM's Watson, right? It can sift through terabytes and zettabytes of data to make better decisions than we ever could. If you put 100 million people or a billion people together, I don't think they could analyze data the way that Watson could. I kind of obviously pulled that number out of my ass, but I would imagine it's true. Yeah. So you combine that with something that is conscious, the possibilities are endless. So let's assume that then it's actually going to want to help us. I mean, you're talking about eradicating diseases, space travel. I mean, that would, if it goes well, would take the human race to, I think levels that we can't even comprehend at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, that is an interesting way to think about it, right? I mean, what if they propel the human desire to explore the known universe and basically just be sort of gasoline to the fire that's already burning in humanity to go and discover new and different things and solve interesting problems that our brains are just not genetically capable of doing?
I think that's the hope and the goal right now for the companies that are working on it, for Google's and the companies that have unlimited resources that are, some of the smartest minds in the world are working on this problem, if you want to call it. I don't know if it's exactly a problem. We might be creating one, but I think the hope and the idea is that it's going to push us forward. Like we were talking about over the weekend, or maybe I was talking about this with someone else. We're not sustainable as a race right now. I think it's no secret. And in order for us to eventually get ahead of that, hopefully, and not, to ruin the planet and not to have overpopulation, not to have insane amounts of homelessness and poverty and famine and potentially all the bad things that can happen, is to keep inventing and keep, designing new things. Our hope and our dream is that we're eventually going to invent faster than we destroy and create, things that will help us to save this home, save the planet, get people out of poverty, solve all these problems that we have. It's never going to be perfect, but I think that's the hope.
Yeah, I think so too. And I can't help but think, like, what year do you think it'll be that the first presidential candidate or the president-elect has an AI in his cabinet, in his or her or non-binary, et cetera, Zimzer's cabinet?
Well, I think they already do, but I'm sure the question you're wondering is
like, who's sitting on, like, who's the secretary? When does Watson become the Secretary of Defense?
I'm sure they're already tapping it. I would be shocked if they didn't have AI and robotics everywhere at the top level.
Think about that for a second. You're just in a briefing, right? And you're like, what do we do in this situation? Well, we got blah, 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 4-star General McCabe over there saying this and that. And then fucking Watson just comes like, just like crunching data. It's like, what the fuck is he thinking over there? And also
gives us the right answer.
Yeah. Everyone's like, okay, do we trust him? Or has he gained consciousness now? It's like,
that's the risk that we run.
That's fascinating. I feel like the more prominent that type of thing becomes over time, the more accurately we'll be able to sort of decide how to move forward with very important things, from a policy perspective, or, just anything in government, right? Take your pick, military, getting people out of poverty, like you said, all those different things. I feel like humans are just fundamentally flawed, and that we love to be part of a fucking tribe, right? It's like, I'm tribe Democrat, I'm tribe Republican, I'm tribe independent, right? But I'm a Warriors fan, I'm a Clippers fan, fuck the Raiders, man, they suck. And then their quarterback plays on your team the next day. It's just like, it's this thing, right? And I think that AI will not have that problem, and likely see much more clearly, in a sense, outside of being part of a tribe, so long as they don't view themselves as part of the robot tribe.
You're spot on. And obviously the reason that goes back many thousands of years. Another thing we were talking about over the weekend, it's that goes back to days when we had to be in tribes if we wanted to survive, when we were trying to avoid getting eaten by saber-toothed cats and these type of fun things. We had to be in tribes in order to survive. And I think it's much more deep-rooted than we actually realize at times, because we need that human connection. And now, having human connection doesn't necessarily mean that we're not in danger of getting eaten by lions anymore as a general population. But it's shifted, right? If we don't have that human connection, we have problems like mental disease now, and depression and all this type of stuff. So there's different dangers, I think, now because of that thing. And I obviously got on a little tangent there, but
not a tangent at all, actually. It's a super interesting point, right? It's like, for some reason, we were developed, and as a human species, call it 200 to 300,000 years ago, right? And the basic genetic materials are the same, and the only thing that's really changed is the epigenetics, which of course is to some extent debatable, and then of course technology and information and culture and society and everything else. But those innate and inherent sort of genetic pre-built things that we have in our minds and bodies never go away, and they do end up manifesting themselves in a lot of different and crazy ways in society today. And no one really thinks about that very often, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're starting to see the limit that humans can be pushed to with the amount of information that we get on a daily basis. I don't know what the figures are, but everyone's read those stats before about the amount of ads that you see on a daily basis. It's, I think, a ridiculously high number, hundreds, maybe thousands. And the amount of, information from news and from social media, we constantly have, our heads in our phones, and it's an overload of data and sensory overload. And I think we're starting to see the limit of humans. I don't know if we were our bodies are necessarily ready for it. And I think we're seeing it with a lot of mental illnesses, depression, and people essentially just snapping because of the maybe the way that we're living, to an extent.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was interesting because I was thinking about the book *Sapiens* that you know and love, and that I've read as well. And I think so. What is the pluralife manifested from sort of that concept? Is it a tribal thing?
That's funny.
Is it? As you're talking, I'm like, I can't believe I've never asked Nilon to fucking connect these two dots before.
I don't know, the whole plur thing.
What does plur stand for?
That's one of the things that we kind of poke fun at in the office.
Yeah.
Peace, love, unity, respect, which is obviously at its core, each of those words is great concepts.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, right? But sometimes we poke fun just because, I think it's very tied to a drug culture as well at this point. So I think it kind of diminishes the concept and what it means to people who are not within the dance music community. I think it's kind of laughed at in general. Within the dance community, for hardcore ravers, that's kind of everything, right? It's just the be good to people, have love, show respect, right? I think that's pretty good, morals to kind of live by. But outside the dance community, I think it's tied with drug usage, and it's a bit of it's made fun of a bit. But
yeah,
going back to *Sapiens*, your initial question, man, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that one.
I knew I'd stump you eventually.
You stump me. I don't know.
Well, I guess, if you think about it, there's always been an entertainment element of some kind within tribes of some sort, right? There's the jester, right? There's the storyteller, there's the shaman, there's, all these various sorts of displays and events. And I guess it's just like a really crazy rain dance.
No, you're spot on. I'm glad actually you brought that up. Yeah, I mean, people have, we've survived this long because we have been able to love and protect one another. So I guess there's the connection for you, is that, we've been able to get this far because we've protected one another to an extent. Sometimes we're at each other's throats and we kill each other and all that bad stuff. But as a whole, inside our own communities, we've been able to protect one another and to grow, and we're by far the most successful parasite that's ever graced this earth.
The most successful parasite. That's going on my LinkedIn profile tonight. Member of one of the most successful parasitic groups of organisms on Earth.
Well, it's so wild. In *Sapiens*, he talks about that one of the most fascinating things. Homo sapiens at one point, there's 6 different species of humans: Homo erectus, Neanderthals, all that good stuff. And Homo sapiens, we're obviously now, that's everyone living as a Homo sapien. And we were so successful in surviving and growing because we worked together so well. And that's what he illustrates in the book, which I found was fascinating. And unfortunately, that comes at the expense of other creatures. All the other human species who are now extinct, and then a lot of other animal species. If you go back and do a little history research, when we were hunters gatherers, there was some wild animals on this planet. Australia had sloths the size of giraffes now, that grazed on trees. We had tigers and lions that were 5 times the size of the ones now, and just crazy animals. But Homo sapiens, we have killed them off.
Yeah,
it's just I think part of our growth, unfortunately, as a side effect of us being so successful in surviving and growing.
Yeah, it's we've either aided in eliminating those species, or the Earth's temperature has changed such, and this is even like 10,000 years ago during the Younger Dryas, right, where North America used to just be one giant sheet of ice, and there was a great inland sea and like all this crazy shit. And when you think about sort of the animals that used to live in North America, even they just couldn't survive. They couldn't adapt. They couldn't survive the getting out of the ice age. Whereas Homo sapiens, I mean, you'll find us all the way up in Norway, right? All the way down in the equatorial regions of the Earth. We're super adaptable. Like you take a woolly mammoth and you drop them in, the Caribbean.
Yeah, it's not
probably game over. Yeah. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens just figuring it out somehow. Just super adaptable.
We keep going. Yeah. I think, maybe I'll put a question on you. I sometimes get asked this question is, and I think about it to myself is kind of what is our purpose, right? For being here. It's one of the biggest questions. But the reason I ask it is because before humans, the Earth was in balance. You could argue, perfectly in balance. The nature and animals, there's a food chain, but everything wasn't balanced. And since, we have grown and expanded, we have, you can argue, put things out of balance. So, whatever you believe in God, or you believe that it was strictly, science, and that it was just a matter of time of evolution and all this stuff. Either way, we happened for a reason. So then it leads me to question is, what is that reason? If things were in balance before and we put things out of balance, why are we here? My thought is that we need to, the way I live my life is that I want to move the needle forward. I believe that every single person put on this planet has a duty to push us forward and to continue to evolve this race, because I can't think of another reason why we are put here if our purpose is not to eventually to get off this rock and go, explore space and to invent the singularity and, create all these amazing things. Because I just can't think, I don't want it to believe that, we are a cancer and that we are eventually just going to ruin everything.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, I think that, I think that the balance, the historical balance of Earth, I think, is somewhat of a romantic thought. And you see that even in sort of more localized ecosystems, right? So you'll have things like invasive species just show up on the island of Hawaii, for instance. There's wild boars just running rampant everywhere, demolishing anything in sight, and they have no natural predators. They're not naturally supposed to be on the island. Therefore, they are just one of the most successful species you'll ever find, right, are boars in Hawaii. And they're very hard to hunt even for humans, because the way that the sort of forests are there, and just the terrain, generally speaking. And so you see things like that. You see things like the Asian carp in rivers in the US, and they'll come and just decimate all of the foliage, all the plants, things of that nature. And sometimes it's because humans put them there. Sometimes it's because they ended up there somehow. Other than humans bringing them there. And I think that different species of animals do throw balances off if they're not natively from there. The difference with us is that we're way smarter than the rest of them.
Yes.
And so therefore our ability to throw that balance way further off is it's exponential.
You can't compare the two things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the boars may dominate in, Hawaii, but they're not dominating on a global scale the way that we are. So
exactly.
Yes, I agree with you. There are certain predators in certain areas that throw things off balance, but we're talking about very small areas.
Yeah, that's right.
To us.
That's right. And Boars are fucking dumb. Like they're not inventing iPhones.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. They're not not going to mine for coal. They're not going to send, crazy amounts of hydrocarbons into the atmosphere and just burn everybody alive and, melt the glaciers and everything else like we have the ability to. And so I think that genetically we are limited in our ability to understand why the universe was created. I think that if you think about a chimp, for instance, right, we share 98+% of our DNA with chimps. They're extraordinarily intelligent as an animal species outside of Homo sapiens. Yet you're not going to teach them how to speak Swedish. It's not going to happen, right? In the same way, like dogs are pretty smart, and you can teach them to sit and shake and stuff like that, but they're never going to talk to you in a language. They're never going to understand basic math. There's a genetic limit to what their brains can handle, and I think in a similar way, we are also genetically limited in what our brains can do. And I think looking at how just crazily vast the universe is and the complexities thereof, I don't think our brains have the ability to understand why we are here. But I think that what we do know is that we are the most intelligent species in the known universe, and the only one that we're aware of that can change things, that can send spaceships onto different planets and can actually modulate ecosystems and the way that planets function. And so in that way, I do think we have the fiduciary responsibility to be the keepers of the Earth, keepers of our galaxy and solar system and everything else that we know, because as far as we're aware, there's nobody else protecting this thing. We got to be the Night's Watch.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's our duty. We were given this level of consciousness. We evolved from apes, and we have to protect it. We were blessed with something that no other creature has, and so it's our role to continue to push the needle forward and not to blow things up.
Yeah, well, the weird thing, right, is like sometimes pushing the needle forward is blowing shit up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird dichotomy, isn't it?
We know, though.
Yeah, that's true.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because we actually don't have the luxury not to continue to invent, because we're not sustainable.
Right.
We unfortunately cannot feed everyone efficiently. There's large wealth gaps. There's disease, all the 1,000+ problems that we have as a race. If we just sit around, they're just going to get worse. So we unfortunately have put ourselves in, fortunately and unfortunately, have put ourselves in a position where we just have to keep pushing.
You think aliens are real?
I don't think. I know they are. I mean, it's just it's a statistical. If you just run the probabilities, I mean, the aliens not being real is a number so small you can't even. It's nearly impossible to think that we're the only ones in this universe.
You think they're abducting people?
I don't think that aliens have come to this planet. I think that's a bit of a. I would like to believe it, but I think it's a bit of a fantasy.
Yeah, me too. I want to believe, but it's just not real.
I was actually talking to my buddy about this a couple days ago. Even if, right, let's say a species was right in the grant holds the universe 12 billion years or something like that.
Yeah, 13 point some odd crazy shit.
So let's say a planet similar to Earth that can harvest life started evolving life even 1 million years before us, which is nothing on the scale of 12 billion years. So if it started the exact same process that we are on right now, just 1 million years before us, imagine the human race, if we are still around in 1 million years, how much more advanced we would be compared to our race. So let's take that into consideration. So even if, let's assume that a race out there is just 1 million years more advanced than us, which is very possible, and they can space travel, they have somehow figured out how to travel at the speed of light. Maybe they figured out how to travel through space, actually bending space, which is not an impossible concept, according to Einstein and these guys who are much smarter than I am. Let's say they figured that out. Even if they could travel like if they were in Star Trek or Star Wars, the odds of them coming to our Earth in our galaxy are so small. It's like nearly impossible. So that's kind of makes me sad when I think about it like that, because I would love nothing more than aliens to come to our planet or have some sort of knowledge that something else is out there. But
man, as long as they're not coming to fucking chop my head off and take over, I'm down. You can stay on the couch, ask them about the Andromeda Galaxy or whatever the fuck they got going on. Hey, how's Spock doing? That kind of stuff would be great. But the weird thing about it, though, because I think generally I have a relatively optimistic view of AI and that sort of thing. I think that generally it's up to humans to control that, and there will be some devious motherfuckers out there, your Kim Jong-uns and your Stalins and Lenins and Hitlers and Mussolinis and all those dudes that there's a chance they're going to do some fucked shit with it. But I think moreover it'll be positive. But with the alien situation, I don't know, man, because every time I think about a species meeting another one, like the Asian carp wasn't like, looking to murder all the tiger salmon in the Missouri River. They just showed up and started swallowing.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. If we're visited by an alien race and they are hostile, we're dead. We have no chance, because their technological superiority, we wouldn't even be able to comprehend how much more advanced that they would be than us.
Hopefully, they're so nice.
We can't even travel to fucking Mars yet. It's in our it's in our backyard, and we've only gone to the moon. So if another species is coming to our planet, that's potentially very bad news for us.
Yeah, I would say so. The weird thing about the probability too is, although it's a very small probability that they would find us, right? But the universe is chaos. Like, things just happen, right? Like the whole basis of the universe is sort of like this chaotic, randomized event that just spits out all these random mutations of various sorts in the forms of gas planets, rock planets, all the species thereof, bacteria, and all this shit. And so there is always that chance, bro.
If I'm being honest with you, I deep down, I hope it happens.
I want it to be real.
I want it to be real.
Me too, bro.
There's nothing more that I want in my lifetime than to get some sort of sign that that there's something else out there. Yeah,
it's like Bigfoot, and Bigfoot, it existed at some point. It was Gigantopithecus, right? It's a bipedal hominid, giant, 9 foot, 10 foot tall ape-like creature that lived somewhere between 30 and 60,000 years ago.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah. Gigantopithecus is real, and that's probably why Homo sapiens, the species, have sort of this legend of the Yeti, the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, all these things, and in various different parts of the world separately, in sort of these origin stories. But I just don't think they're hanging out anymore, and I goddamn wish they would.
No, they're not. Have you heard about Kevin Kelly, founder of Wired? He's a part of a project that is trying to bring back woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, which is just mind-blowing that we are, again, technology, medicine, it's unbelievable where we're at, that we're going to be able to bring back these creatures. It's actually unbelievable.
Yeah, there was there's a podcast called the Meat Eater Podcast by Steve Rinella, and he's like this crazy intelligent sort of wildlife enthusiast, wildlife biologist type character and hunter, and he has all these fascinating guests on, and he had one of the girls that are working on that exact program with the woolly mammoth. And it's interesting because it will, what they were saying is, it will look like a woolly mammoth, it'll behave like a woolly mammoth, but actually, like, phenotypically it'll look like a woolly mammoth, but it actually won't be fully woolly mammoth. Like, you'll never be able to totally bring 100% of the species back, because you have to have sort of a host species. And so it'll be a hybrid no matter what happens. And so, like, in real terms, it won't actually be it, but it'll look very similar to what it was. And what they were saying is using it as a solution for global warming, something to do with the permafrost, and how woolly mammoths at one time on this continent would perforate the ground and sort of in some form or factor. And again, these people are way smarter than I am. I have no fucking clue, but somehow it would suck up greenhouse gases and this sort of thing out of the atmosphere is a possible solution.
I'm all for it,
dude. Me too. Sign me up.
I'm all for it.
Buying me a saddle, give me some reins. I will fucking ride a woolly mammoth.
Any day of the week.
That'd be so awesome. That'd be the scariest tribe to ever come across in your entire life. If you're just chilling, right? You're just like in a hut or an igloo or whatever you're doing. And then some random tribe of dudes show up on woolly mammoths. Fuck, dude.
Scary sight.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, sort of the EDM culture. I don't think there's any woolly mammoths in there, although I do see some people wearing woolly mammoth type attire because everyone like dresses up to go to raves. Yeah. Do you think that the EDM scene when we were younger was really growing a lot? Mm-hmm. Like that was one of the birthplaces. I mean, it was in the 90s for sure, like rave culture and stuff. But I feel like there was a resurgence when we were a bit younger, and I just wonder like how that's changed over time. You're talking a little bit about sort of the outward public perception of it being purely drug fueled and all of this, which I think is very much a reduction of what the genre is, because I love EDM. Yeah. And I think as our generation grows a bit older, and we're not 21 and just trying to do crazy fuck shit all the time, how do you think that will mature? When you think of like classic rock in the 60s and 70s, and everybody's just doing LSD at Woodstock and that kind of shit, and now they're our parents or grandparents, they've chilled out, but they still listen to the same music. Do you think that'll happen in the same way with us?
I do. I mean, in the US, we're behind. You go to Europe, right? And it's a much more mature, older party crowd. They're just listening to the music they're listening to is a bit different. It's more, house music, some tech type of stuff. And you go to Ibiza, go to Mykonos, these type of party places, and there's not that many 21-year-olds there acting like they're in Vegas or at the frat house type of thing. It's a much more it's people are partying, but it's not as chaotic. I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but it's a bit more controlled. In the UK and all over Europe, house music has been around and been popular much longer than it has in the US. Of course, you can go back to Detroit and Chicago and stuff like that, the breeding grounds of dance music in the US. But it's been going on in Europe for a lot longer than it has here. And when you go there, there's our parents, but our parents' age people, they're still jamming out. They're still listening to house music, and they're going to these type of
house
places.
Music.
Yeah. So I think yes, to answer your question, it's will continue to evolve. The culture will continue to evolve, and there'll be something different for everyone. The US is very good at commercial, making things commercial very quickly and monetizing things. So you'll always have the Vegas, and I don't think it will leave Vegas because it's an elevated party experience. If you go to the EDM show, a dance music show, whatever you want to call it, in Vegas, and then you go see hip hop, a rapper or something like that, it's a very different experience. And some people like the rap. I love rap, and I like that experience, but it's not comparable to going and seeing a DJ at a club and people are going crazy. So that will always be there, I think, because it's you're not going to go away from an elevated party experience. There are people that are always going to want that. And then I think it will just continue to evolve as people get older and, a little more sexy vibes, a little chill, in nicer places, people that have a little bit more money to spend, will just do elevated experiences.
That is so fascinating to think about. And even when you said elevated party experience, that's exactly what it is too, right? I mean, it's like, and you can name your other genre of music, it doesn't matter. You're into metal, you're into indie or folk or hip hop or whatever. It doesn't matter, because Steve Aoki is going to fucking throw a way better party than any of them.
Yep.
Like, it's just going to be frenetic. Like it's just going to be this crazy kinetic energy between humans. And the weirdest part about it is, like, a lot of those dudes, they don't even have to play the actual, they don't have to do the music. They don't have to, like, produce it. while they're DJing it, they could just like press play on Spotify and just stand there with their fucking hands up, and like everyone still loves it.
Yeah, I think these guys are, the best of the best. They know how to control the crowd. It's unfortunate. I think there's a kind of a misconception. It's people who are kind of haters in a sense will say, DJs don't do anything. And of course, there's people that stand up there and yes, they don't do much. Not to hate on Paris Hilton, but I can't imagine she's, really crushing the decks when she's doing her sets, more power to her, because people come and see her play. So I'm 100%. Not taking anything away from her, but there are plenty of men and women who are extremely talented on the decks. They got, 4 CDJs going at once. They're controlling the crowd. They're live mixing. We're talking about people who are playing these instruments similar to the way someone strokes a guitar or plays a piano. The difference is that the barrier to entry is much, much lower. You can teach someone in an hour how to play CDJs, at the novice level, right? Where you can't teach someone in an hour how to play a guitar. They're just going to sound like shit. Yeah. So I think that's where the kind of the bad image comes from. But when you get to the top level of the people who are really controlling these parties and the music that they're playing, it's an art without a doubt. It is.
And when you watch them do it, you can tell, and I've been making music forever, and, I was in a death metal band, and, I play a lot of acoustic guitar and sing, and I was a chorus and choir and show choir, and, messed around with a lot of Ableton and Reason and even FL Studio back in the day, making beats and shit like that. And there is, especially when you're doing that shit live, there is absolute undeniable talent to that. The only thing they're saving on, and I think it was, I can't remember which classic rock guy this was. It might have been Ace Frehley or it might have been Gene Simmons or one of these guys. But what they were saying is the thing that EDM has going for it, which is so unique, is that those guys can play every fucking night. No problem. And when you're doing something like singing, you can't sing every single night. You can, your vocal limitation will not allow you to do that. Or even something like guitar, like your fingers have to move so fast, so often, for so long, like your body starts to break down a bit. And EDM in that way allows these guys to commercialize the music in a way that it's never been able to be done before, and therefore are just infinitely more economically successful because they can play 10x the live shows that an opera singer or something like that can do, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, some of these guys are animals. To go back to Steve Aoki, we've had the pleasure of working with him and Democ and his entire team. Great people. I remember one time I was at their office, and his manager had told me, this must have been 2017 or 2016, that Steve had done 250 or 270 shows the year before. Something. It was such an absurdly high number that I was in such shock. And he has nutritionists on the road. I mean, he's so dialed in. In order to do that many nights, I mean, I don't care if you're not singing. I mean, that is just impressive. That takes real discipline, talent, and a lot of stamina and energy from somewhere. Because these guys are, they're playing all night. They're getting on planes, jets, getting very little amounts of sleep, getting to the next show. Again, going back to what we started talking about, the very first thing that we said was everything seems a lot more glamorous from the outside, and of course, being a professional global touring DJ is, I don't think anyone can argue, is probably one of the best professions. With that said, it's not some sort of cakewalk. If you're playing 3-4 nights a week, that's a lot of strain on the body. You gotta eat right. You gotta try and get sleep in. I've seen, unfortunately, I've been very close to a lot of careers where guys are drinking and excessively every night when they're playing. It's very easy, right? You're in an incredible party environment when you're up on that stage and everyone's looking at you. So I've been on that stage before, but I obviously haven't been on the decks, but many times I've been on that stage where the entire crowd is kind of, funneling that energy towards you in a sense. And it's very easy, I think, for these guys to party aggressively. And I've seen some unfortunate things happen because of it. So you really got to be on your game in order to be sustainable. And then you got to find time to make music. You got to find time to, do all these things to have a career. So it's very impressive.
That is such a fucking beast, man. And to think, someone like Steve Aoki's like this just like, crazily successful dude who, when you see him on stage, like what he does up there is just insane, and the way that he controls the room, like you're saying, it takes so much energy, and to bottle that night after night, and these are late nights, right? Because the thing about EDM shows, like they go late.
Yep.
And like you said, there's this very distinct, more distinct than, again, any other genre, party atmosphere, which is so much more conducive to drinking, partying, et cetera, than even a rock show or a rap show or a whatever, because people are there to party, and you are the fucking god on stage everyone's partying to. And when you see guys at the top of their game like that do it, it's crazily impressive. I would imagine that along with the nutritionist, you got to have a personal trainer of some kind, like making sure you're staying in shape, and like maybe a massage therapist or something. I mean,
you need a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had the chance to see the Avicii documentary. If you haven't, you should. It's, and I mean, that gives everyone in the world a glimpse at what can, he was such a sad story, obviously. He was outside of that stage when he was on those decks. He was a broken man. He was in so many ways sad, depressed, had so many issues, obviously, and it was shown in that documentary. And I think at one point he mentioned, but every time, even, at the lowest levels that he was, even when he would get up on that stage, that was kind of the only thing that kept him going, in a sense, is that it's almost an addiction, right? It's they're chasing that. It seems like chasing that high. Of course, I don't know him, but it seems like, in my opinion, he was chasing the high, and then it killed him, unfortunately. Yeah,
it's one of those sad stories, and you see it time and time again too, right? And it's Avicii, it's Janis Joplin, it's Jimi Hendrix, it's all these guys and gals that, usually late 20s. Like, I don't remember what the year is, but some 28,
27,
27,
one of the two. Yeah, it's there is an age. It's where Hendrix, Janis, a lot of people died. Yeah,
and I think Avicii was right in that range. I think he was 28 or something. And it does go to show you, like you said, it seems glamorous on the outside. Everything does. And typically you're only going to see the outside, right? You're going to see the party, or you're going to see the business, or you're going to see, press, or you're going to see all this stuff. But what's going on in between somebody's two ears at nighttime, you don't know. And with him, that was one of the most surprising things, because, on paper, it's like, this dude's got easily one of the coolest jobs of all time, universally loved, right, in the industry, and by people listening to the music, and it can just take that turn at some point if you're not taking care of your mental health.
He was isolated. That just led me to think of Anthony Bourdain as well. Everyone said, this guy was a legend, loved by millions of people. You ask anyone, oh man, I would love to have Anthony Bourdain's job. Travel the world, the most beautiful places, eat food, hang out with all different types of culture and people from all different, wealth and class and everything in between. And he was alone. He admitted it. He said, I feel isolated and alone, and he took his life, so unbelievably sad. So, it's, the grass is always greener statement, on the other side is definitely rings true. I think it's important just to be grateful for what you have,
It is. It's be grateful for what you have. And then also, and we were talking about this earlier, like, figure that out in advance.
Yeah.
Too, right? At least strategies to hedge against it, having that self-awareness to say, what are the thoughts going through my head?
Yeah.
Right? Recognize them as such. Okay, that's a bad thought. Let that one go right on by. That's not me. Right? Okay, what's the next thought? Oh, it's a bad one too. let that one go by too, until one of the good thoughts come. Be like, okay, I'll think about that thought for a while, right? And maybe I'll go exercise tomorrow, so I can get some of that good juice in there. And then maybe, building those things in and taking care of your mental health, no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're a janitor or a coal miner or a nurse or an LPN, any of this stuff, an entrepreneur, a musician, TV show host. It's one of those things where you have to realize what's going on in your meat vehicle, and just keep that thing lubed up, especially with the brain, because that's the weirdest thing is that's the thing you don't see. You see everything else. Like you break your leg. I'm like, dude, what'd you do to your leg? Like it looks so fucked up, right? Maybe it's amputated even. Meanwhile, I don't know what's going on with your amygdala.
Yeah.
So no one else is going to see it. Only you'll see it.
Yeah. You always hear, sometimes the people that you never expect who are depressed, right? And are having these issues, they seem like they're doing just fine on the outside. I'm been fortunate enough where I don't, obviously the chemical imbalances for people is so sad, and I've been fortunate not to have that, and I've never dealt with depression or anything like that, but I've seen it, and it's just it's terrible. Of course, there's nothing in this world, no amount of money or job or anything that is worth anguish and mental pain and depression, and if anything that you can do to kind of get out of a funk is worth it. It's just, it's really sad to see people go through.
Yeah, I think so too. And at least for me, music is something that always makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Is it the same for you? I feel like music is like this. It's like this jubilation you can just get from it sometimes, or like it'll even make you do weird shit. Like maybe you're about to give up on an exercise and you got the right song on and the fucking excision kicks in. And it's like, you're just like,
it's just that universal language, right?
Yeah.
I think it's one, right? Even if you can go to a show and there could be, 50 different languages there. No one can speak to one another, but everyone can understand, right, the music that's going on.
Yeah.
So I think it is that universal language that people can relate to and connect with.
Yeah, that's sick. That is sick. And it's cool that you have a business that's just so intimately associated with it. I find that super duper fascinating. And it's in a way that, a lot, if you're a manager or you're putting on venues or things, like, of course that's directly related, but to have a business that is just one step removed from that is really fascinating, because you're not contingent upon that, right? You're providing like a service to the.
We got one foot in.
Yeah, 1 foot in.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
That's cool.
Honestly, working within the dance music community. Very tight knit community. People look out for one another. That's some of the stuff I think that people kind of make fun of it for, that plur, it's a little, baby. Yeah, the whole plur thing. But when you really dissect it, it's incredible, because we've had customers and fans and the artists that we've been able to work with have all been fantastic. It's been quite the journey. I wouldn't replace it for anything.
I can't imagine you would.
Yeah.
And so it's Electric Family. And where can people find this shit?
Electricfamily.com.
Electricfamily.com. And does it have an Instagram as well?
It sure does. At Electric Family on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, all the good stuff. Facebook's a bit irrelevant now. No one uses it anymore.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. But you can also find them there. The designs are fucking sick. They really, truly are. And, I'd love to design student. So every time I go on and look at all the things you're doing, it's super cool and super special. So.
Well, I appreciate that, bud. And you're obviously a huge inspiration to me with everything that you're doing. It's really incredible.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Well, thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
Likewise.
We did it.
Anytime.
Woo!
That was awesome.
Welcome to the Ingersöll Show.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and also thank you in advance for subscribing to the show and leaving it a 5-star review. Also, thank you for sharing it with your friends that you think would also enjoy it. And thank you to Drew Nilon of Electric Family. And until next time, I'll chat at you then. Peace.